Today on the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement, we're going to discuss what history has shown us when it comes to stock market bubbles. And on our Coach's Corner today, we're going to discuss market bubbles and what could potentially be causing our economy to be in one right now. And on our Chalk Talk segment today, we're going to show you 3 ways to invest your money now while the market is volatile. So sit back, relax, and learn. The Chad Slagle Show starts now. I'm Chad Slagle. I believe financial planning is about educating people and empowering them to make better decisions with their hard-earned dollars. Coaching gives me satisfaction from watching a player succeed and get better. You need an experienced team around you. The best coaches have great assistant coaches. I have brought a lot of the techniques and structure I learned from playing and coaching football and applied them to the world of investing. My goal now is to coach as many individuals and families as I can on how to get successfully to and through retirement. Welcome into the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement. I'm the coach, Chad Slagle, here with my colleague, Chad Tobin, and today on the Clipboard segment, we're going to discuss what history has shown us when it comes to stock market bubbles. You know, our world today is in a constant tug of war. When you turn on your TV or open up your phone, you're not sure what advice or what restrictions you have been placed on you. You have to wear a mask in public? No, wait, you don't have to wear a mask. COVID-19 cases are going down? No, wait, they're going up. It's because of more testing or it's not. It seems with our media and our news stations today, we are not sure what to believe or who to trust. The same when it comes to your retirement and the stock market today. How do stock prices continue to go up when it seems our country is in ruins? By all measures, our economy is in the worst shape since the Great Depression, with GDP plunging, unemployment officially at 13.3%, and consumption spending in free fall. Yet, the market, the S&P 500 index, is only down 2.5% year to date, and the NASDAQ is actually up for the year over 12%. So questions we all have is how, and is this perhaps another bubble like the real estate bubble in 2008 or the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s? Whether it is or isn't, you have to make sure you are protected and prepare as you get closer to retirement, or Chad, when you do retire today.
Yeah, and I think, we're looking at some of these numbers, and I think looking at right now, it's too early to tell if we're in another bubble, but I think it's important to understand when I was looking at the volatility that we've seen this year so far, there's a measure, there's a VIX index, and it's a measurement of the volatility in the markets. And the average that we've seen, the VIX index average, long-term average, is probably somewhere around 15%. Now, early in March, we saw that VIX go up to almost in the 80% range, and now it's over about 30. So these numbers, we're still in a very volatile time. We've seen it a lot more volatile, but I think you have to understand, are we in a bubble? When we're usually in it, we really don't know until it's over.
It's kind of the up and the down. Where we at, we have no idea from day to day, whether it's the market, whether it's the COVID-19, whether it's a testing, or the politicians, we really have no idea. And that's what we want to talk about today. The market this year, if we are potentially in the next bubble, how should you protect yourself? How should you invest your money? And as we talk about all the time on the show, Chad, as you get closer to retirement, or when you do retire, you want to make sure that you plan for the worst and hope for the best. We hope we're not in another bubble. We hope the market continues to go up. But if we're not, how do you protect yourself if you're retired or 3 to 5 years from retiring?
Yeah, and I think, we've all been through the 2000s and the early dot-com era and the 2008, the real estate bubble. But, when we're working, it's one thing. We've got time to make up and get through these ups and the downs. But when you're retired, this is a completely different world that you're living in. You can't afford kind of that market correction if that bubble bursts.
When we return on the Coach's Corner, we're going to discuss market bubbles and what could potentially be causing our economy to be in one right now. We'll be right back. The number one concern of retirees today is outliving their hard-earned dollars. It is more important now than ever to educate and empower yourself to make better decisions with your money that it has taken you 30 to 40 years to accumulate. How do you do this? By using our financial GPS, our guided planning system. This is a 4-step process to help get you successfully to and through retirement. The first step in this process is to create clarity. Here we will help identify your goals as well as your concerns and identify what you want to accomplish in retirement. The second step, we will analyze the risk you're taking with your current portfolio, and this step will also identify exactly what you are paying in fees. In the third step, we will evaluate and assess your current plan and help identify the gap between the missing pieces. And in the fourth and final step, this is where we will work together to implement a plan of action to accomplish your retirement goals. And this process can take place at any one of our convenient locations in Missouri, at our Creve Coeur and Sunset Hills offices, or in Illinois at our Edwardsville, Springfield, and Jacksonville locations. So call now to get set up on the right path on your journey through retirement. Welcome back to the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement. We're back here with my colleague, Chad Tobin. And today on the Coach's Corner, we're going to discuss market bubbles and what could potentially be causing our economy to be in one right now. As we've all seen so far this year in 2020, our economy has experienced many things that most of us did not expect. With the coronavirus being discovered to a worldwide pandemic, it has only taken a toll on our economy, a big toll. Job losses caused by the pandemic reached more than 36 million in just 2 months. This is uncharted territory. And of course, businesses across the country have been shuttered, and many industries as a whole are in very hot water. The Fed, of course, have been doing many things throughout this process to help out our economy at all costs. The first thing they did is in mid-March was Congress passed 2 bipartisan bills in response to the rapidly spreading pandemic. The first allocated $8.3 billion for healthcare organizations and coronavirus treatment research, and the second, worth about $100 billion, set up free testing, established paid emergency leave, and bulked up unemployment and Medicaid funding. And this was just the start of many moves to help out our economy, of course. And there's been many more moves since then. And Chad, these are things, unfortunately, that we have needed to happen to keep our economy and to keep our country going.
Yeah, and I think when we look and we go back to about March 23rd, and that's when the market really kind of bottomed out. And since then, the market's, the Dow Jones is up over 40% since that point. So I think, this kind of resurgence of the markets and the economies of that growth has been really, really good. So it leads the question of, now that we've kind of gotten about 40% growth back with all of the other things kind of still going on, have we created this bubble?
And when we talk about bubble, what is a stock market bubble? Well, a stock market bubble is a rapid escalation of asset prices followed by a contraction or a reduction, often created by a surge in asset prices that is fundamentally unwarranted. Changes in investor behavior are the primary causes of bubble, what we call behavioral economics, that form an economy, securities, stock markets, and of course business sectors, according to Investopedia.com. We think back to the dot-com bubble from 95 to 2001. NASDAQ index had a 76.8% fall over a 2.5-year period from March of 2000 to October of 2002. And of course, the real estate or the housing bubble from 2006 to 2012, the Dow dropped 31% during a 3-week period from September 9th, 2008 to October 10th, 2008. So you think of any kind of bubble, of course, it starts blowing up or the market quickly rises, and at some point it gets to a peak where eventually, Chad, it has to burst, or it does burst. And what happens then is it quickly reduces rapidly.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about our kids, and this is something when we think about our kids blowing and chewing gum and blowing that bubble, eventually, it's fun while they continue to get it bigger, but then once it bursts, it's all over their face. And I think, we read, we listen to a lot of economists today, and a lot of economists are really kind of looking at this being the next bubble. And I think, you really don't know if you're in a bubble until it does burst, and you're kind of looking at it from the hindsight. So I think it's important to understand, are we in a bubble? If we are, what can we do to kind of help ourselves?
That's right, Chad. So that leads us to the next point. What has caused the market to continue to rise lately after the significant drop due to, of course, the coronavirus? And we talk about the Fed, and the federal government, of course, has done a great job of propping the market and our economy up by doing numerous things. One of the main things they've done is, of course, the stimulus package. The first stimulus package is known as the $2.2 trillion CARES Act. This was signed into law by President Trump at the end of March. It authorized the U.S. to send out stimulus checks directly to Americans. It also established the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, a $350 billion program administered by the Small Business Administration to provide forgivable loans to cover payroll and overhead expenses intended to keep smaller businesses from folding. And of course, the CARES Act also included a $500 billion corporate bailout fund. And of course, Chad, it was a good thing that they did this. It kept people from, having to be unemployed. It kept businesses afloat till eventually now we see more businesses getting back to work. And of course, hopefully the economy is getting back to where it was. But again, there's still a lot of signs out there that we're not quite there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all feel that just with our instincts. And I think another stimulus package that was introduced in May is known as the $3 trillion HEROES Act. Now, this is a bill that was introduced by House Democrats. It has $875 billion in additional funding for state and local governments and $20 billion each for tribal governments and U.S. territories. The legislation also includes another $75 billion for testing, new provisions for hazard pay for essential workers, and $75 billion in mortgage relief. So there's a lot more coming, possibly, if this gets passed. Another $100 billion for rental assistance, another $25 billion for the Postal Service, and provisions for a second round of that $1,200 a month stimulus check. So if it passes the Senate in its current form, it will make the largest piece of stimulus legislation in American history. So the first round was huge, but there could be another round that's even bigger.
Absolutely. When we talk about the federal government trying to push a lot of things to help prop up our economy, we also talk about the Fed and what they're trying to do with interest rates. In an emergency move, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to zero. And of course, Chad, they've said numerous times here lately, they're going to keep interest rates at zero until 2022. So for most Americans, this surprise action could mean lower borrowing costs, but at the same time, you will earn less on your money in investments such as bonds, CDs, and of course, fixed annuities. So with all these changes being made, the market has seen some significant gains in the past few months. So the thing is, are we approaching the next market bubble? Should you be worried? And as we mentioned earlier, Chad, are we in another bubble? Is it going to burst? We have no idea, but if you look at the underlying issues that we have right now, if we look at, the virus and then more and more cases showing up now as we go out and we start doing more, and then of course, Chad, with the fall, and of course the virus is going to come back unless something's done, I think the important thing you need to do, as we talk about a lot of times on this show, is you need to plan for the worst and hope for the best. We hope there's not another bubble. We hope the market continues to go up and our economy continues to improve and these cases continue to drop. But you as a retiree, or if you're getting ready to retire in the next 3 to 5 years, you need to protect yourself from the worst.
Yeah, and I think, it's so important. I think having peace of mind, understanding, your portfolio, understanding your income needs, understanding your risk tolerance, times like this really test all of those. And I think if we are indeed in a bubble and this bubble were to burst at some point in the future, if you take some steps to really protect yourself and kind of connect yourself to your money, you're going to feel a lot better moving forward, whether we're in the bubble and it bursts or we continue to move forward.
And the first step you want to take is to download our free white paper today about understanding market corrections. To do that, visit www.slagleFinancial.com/empoweryou. Coming up on Chalk Talk, we're going to show you 3 ways to invest your money now while the market continues to be volatile. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back into the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement. So we just discussed possible market bubbles and what could potentially be causing our economy to be in one right now. Now we're going to show you 3 ways to invest your money now while the market continues to go up and down and we continue to have the market volatility. Chad, the past few months has really started to throw up some question marks in a lot of people's heads. At first, we went from all-time highs, as you mentioned earlier, back in February, to a significant drop because of the pandemic. I think somewhere around 37%. Many people plan to retire this year, and now they're having to work longer because of how much they lost in their portfolios. But the market has been climbing back up, as you just mentioned, the past few months, and people are starting to feel more comfortable. But it raises the question that none of us want to ask, but we need to. Are we approaching the next market bubble? So whether we are or we are not, it's so important to make sure that you have a game plan set up to withstand the next bubble. whenever it does occur. So today on Chalk Talk, we're going to show you 3 ways to invest your hard-earned dollars now so that you can withstand the next bubble and so that you can be proactive and stop chasing the market.
Yeah, and I think it's, one thing that this allowed a lot of pre-retirees, retirees to do is kind of figure out were they set up properly. Going into, the end of last year, we continue to hit all-time highs in the stock market. Everybody's 401ks and investments, everything was really going good. Even into January, mid-February, things were going good, and then all of a sudden it was like a baseball bat to our knees, and we got hit hard. So, if you weren't set up properly, number one, your eyes opened and you kind of started realizing, what should I be doing? And hopefully this helps you understand having a plan is so important.
A baseball bat to the knees.
That hurts.
It does hurt. So what we want to talk about, when we talk about retirement planning and how to set your portfolio up properly as you get closer to retirement and when you do retire, the first thing you want to do, folks, is you have to make sure that you have your money set up in the proper buckets. You cannot have all of your money sitting in one bucket or sitting all in the stock market. So what we recommend and what we talk to our clients about is having those 3 buckets. You want to have some money sitting in that secure bucket where, number one, it's safe. If the market has a 10, 20, or a 30% correction or a 40% correction, that money will not lose a dime. Also, if you need income from your portfolio, if you need income from your investments, that money's sitting in the secure bucket. Why? Because that money's going to come in each and every month for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live and no matter how long your spouse lives. And that's the secure bucket. Now, once you have that set up, then you can have some money sitting in the growth bucket, where it is at risk in the market, but it's there for the long term. It's there to keep up the rate of inflation and cost of living. If the market's down, it's not a big deal. We can wait for the market to come back up. Then when it comes back up, then you can go in and harvest some of those gains from that growth bucket. But when it's down, you do not have to sell anything or lock in any of those losses. And of course, Chad, that third bucket or that extra bucket that we talk about, it could be for a dream bucket, we can say a lot of times, if you want to have a second home, or if you have these big dreams, these things you've been saving for the past 30 to 40 years that you want to accomplish. If it's a camper, if it's spending time with your kids or grandkids and taking them on one big trip, whatever it is, or it could be legacy planning. Chad, that thing out there that a lot of people unfortunately do not plan for is that long-term care. What happens if me or my spouse have to go to a nursing home, have to have some kind of long-term care? How are we going to pay for those bills? So that's the secure bucket, the growth bucket, and that extra bucket. And Chad, it's important to make sure that you have a little bit of money in all 3.
Yeah, and I think, common sense kind of tells us that's a prudent way of kind of spreading our money out. And I think what we see so often is, people are only using one bucket, so to speak, and that's their 401k, their investments. It's all about that growth bucket, and that's what we're used to. And so as you get closer to retirement, that's why it's so important to be able to kind of have money in the secure bucket, have money in that growth bucket, and have that dream bucket set up. So if we are in a bubble and it bursts, you're in a much better situation moving forward to get you through it.
You have a well-diversified portfolio, not just stocks and bonds, but an actual portfolio set up, as you mentioned, Chad, with that secure money, that growth money, and of course that extra money that you have set to the side. And we talk about that extra bucket. That leads us to the next point. And we talked about, Chad, earlier, we talk about new strategies. We've talked about the bubble and what's happening right now and all the things the federal government and the Fed are doing to pump money into the market. The problem is, Chad, somebody eventually has to pay for this, and eventually that's going to be us in the form of taxes. So if you don't need income now, or you have money setting aside for a few years in that extra bucket, now is a great time to think outside the box. You have a lot of your monies that you have now. As we mentioned before on the show, 20 years ago, 80% of American workers had a pension. Today, less than 20%. So now your main retirement vehicle are these 401ks or qualified accounts that you've never ever paid taxes on. But eventually, whether you want to or not, you're going to have to start drawing that money out. And when you start drawing that money out in 2026, it's already baked into the current legislation, taxes are going to go up. So how can you take some of the money you have right now that you don't need and get that into a position where eventually when you do draw it out, it is tax-free income? One way, of course, Chad, is what we call Roth conversions, but there are also some other tax planning strategies that you want to look at as well.
Yeah, and I think, the conversion strategy is a great strategy. A lot of our clients are using it as well. It's great to talk about, especially when the market dropped so much in February, at the end of February, early March. We were able to take some of those beaten up stocks, convert those at a lower point into that, from that IRA to the Roth IRA, and writing those gains back up now tax-free. But number two is that legacy planning option where, a lot of people, we want to, take money out of your qualified accounts, pay the taxes now over the next 5 years or so. As a tax strategy, hopefully we're in a lower bracket than we're going to be probably in the next 5 or 6 years. Pay the taxes now, stretch it out over 5 years. Number two, if something were to happen, now we're leaving a leveraged tax-free value worth a lot more than you just converted to your family as a tax-free death benefit to your loved ones. We can also include some long-term care protection. And oh, by the way, if you still need income 5, 6 years down the road, we can still use that cash to provide us more of a tax-free income. So, we talk about the tax strategy, the Roth conversion being number one, using that legacy planning tax strategy as number two. I think those two strategies right now are so important to understand.
And when you talk about that leveraging, we're talking 2.5, 3 times what you put in would be for you, would be for your beneficiaries, but also would be used for long-term care if you need that. But probably the most important thing you need to understand, are we in a bubble? Are we not in a bubble? As you get closer to retirement, you want to get to the point where you do not panic. We've seen far too many people panic when the market dropped back in March. Got out of the market, completely sold out of the market, sitting on the sidelines. They lost out in that 40% gain, Chad, where the market came back. Now they want to know, hey, should we get in? And now's probably not the time with all of those assets if you've been sitting on the sidelines the whole time. The important thing is you never want to chase the market. You never want to react to the market. What you want to do is you want to make sure you're proactive with the game plan that you build, that you have that secure bucket, that you have that growth bucket, that you have that extra bucket. And understand the market is going to correct itself. You're going to have a lot of times over the next 20 to 30 years where the market's going to go up and the market's going to go down. But if you have a proactive game plan and not a reactive game plan, then you should be successful in retirement.
Yeah, and I think the important, as you just mentioned, don't panic. If you have a plan in place, things can kind of get crazy at times. You just have a simple plan you're able to revisit, gives you a little peace of mind, allows you not to panic and react and make some decisions that you normally wouldn't. So I think don't panic is the most important thing as well.
To download our free white paper today about understanding market corrections, visit www.slagleFinancial.com/empoweryou. When we come back on our strategy play, we're going to discuss how you are currently invested now and the risk of the next bubble burst and what it means to you. We'll be right back.
He's such an involved dad. He's always telling the kids stories. I remember when so-and-so said I couldn't do this or I didn't make this team. That's what drives him. In our family, we always tell our kids to stick up for each other, stand behind one another. He feels it's his role to provide, keep us safe, and to make sure that the kids are taken care of. A lot of Chad's clients have the same traditional values, and he bonds with them. Each family has a different set of circumstances, and each family is unique and different. The common thread between all of Chad's clients is that they want the best for their family, just as he would our own family.
Welcome back to the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement. On this week's strategy play, we're going to discuss how you are currently invested now and the risk of the next market bubble burst. And a lot of people, Chad, really don't realize how much money you lose and what it takes to come back, especially like we mentioned earlier, when you have a 37% drop in the market.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think, well, if I lost 30% and I made 30% the following month, I should have my money back. But let's take a look. So I think if you look here, the question is, how are you invested? If you're all in the market, as we talked earlier, in the Dow Jones this year, we look at some performance numbers, pretty similar. February 19th to March 23rd, the Dow dropped 36%. From March 24th to June 23rd, it's actually climbed over 40%. So a lot of people would think, you look at these numbers, I should have all my money back.
And this is what happened to a lot of people that we've talked to over the past couple of months, Chad, with their 401ks, with their IRAs and their company plans. And a lot of them, it's a good thing the market's back up, but you're not back to where you were. As we take a look here, if you lost 36%, market's up 40, you actually made 4%, right? Actually, that $1 million, since you lost over 36.4%, you were down to under $636,000. Now, the market comes back with that 40% gain, but you're not back to $1 million. You're only at $894,000, still down over $106,000.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. People see these markets back up, but it's so important to understand when you lose money and as the markets go up, really what it takes to get back to. So the question is, what would it take if we lost 36% to our $1 million to get back?
So if we take a look here on the screen, you actually need almost a 60% return just to get back to where you were. And the thing is, folks, can you afford to continue that take that kind of risk? Do you think the market is going to come back another 20% from the 40% gain that we've already had right now? And that's why it's so important, folks, to make sure that you're not chasing the market, to make sure you're proactive with that game plan that we talk about by having the money in the proper buckets with the secure bucket, the growth bucket, and that dream bucket, that extra bucket, and to make sure that you don't panic. And you are, again, proactive with that game plan, Chad, not reactive.
Yeah, and you mentioned having the game plan. If you don't have a game plan and you're just kind of reacting and chasing these markets, probably pretty eye-opening. But if you're getting ready to retire or you're moving closer or you're in retirement, it's so important to utilize those 3 buckets and to have that plan in place.
To get more detailed information on these strategies and how they can work for you, call us now to schedule your 5-point inspection at 888-294-9248 or email us at info@slagleFinancial.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back with some of the key takeaways from today. Welcome back to the Chad Slagle Show, coaching you to and through retirement. We've covered a lot today, so let's jump in and talk about some of the key takeaways and some things to remember from today's show. Of course, number 1, understand a market bubble and what history has shown us. Number 2, understand what is propping up the markets that last the last few months and how that may or may not affect you. Number 3, Chad, understand the 3 ways to invest your money now when the market is volatile. It's about being diversified and being smart and being proactive when it comes to your hard-earned dollars.
Yeah, we talked about the 3 buckets and keeping it simple, that secure bucket, your growth bucket, and that dream bucket. Set those buckets up accordingly to you, your risk tolerance, your income needs, those lifestyle goals, and it'll allow you to not panic if this bubble bursts.
To download our free white paper today about understanding market corrections, visit www.slagleFinancial.com/empoweryou. For more information about our upcoming educational events, call 888-294-9248 or visit ChadSlagleshow.com. Remember, folks, success is waking up in the morning, whoever you are, wherever you are, no matter how old or young you are, and bounding out of bed because there's something out there that you love to do, that you believe in, that you're good at, and you can hardly wait to get at it again today. At Slagle Financial, realize that this is bigger than our team. It's about educating you, the public, and our wonderful clients, and empowering you to make better decisions with your hard-earned dollars. For my colleague, Chad Tobin, this is the coach, Chad Slagle. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to visiting with each and every one of you next week.